Do my eyes look to have a little sparkle in them today? A little extra special sauce there? Well, it's because I finally saw a great film, snapping the stinker streak of Joker 2 and Megaflopolis. God bless. I saw Transformers 1. This has been one of the most highly requested things I've had all year. Like, second only to people requesting that I get taller or cut my hair. People really love this film. It has a lot of hype. And apparently it hasn't been performing that well at the box office, which is just a fucking shame. Because it lived up to the hype. I actually liked it a lot. I planned on seeing it 2 weeks ago when it came out, but unfortunately my ass was getting cooked like a Thanksgiving turkey by COVID. So I wasn't able to go, but I went and saw it today and I liked it a lot. I do think this is one of the better Transformers movies that's been made. Like, period. I'm not just talking about like animated Transformers. I mean like of all Transformers movies. It's just super solid. And I think the trailers and the marketing for this film did it a huge disservice. I think the reason why it hasn't gone like fucking Bazinga style at the box office is because a lot of people thought that this was purely a children's movie. Like all the marketing material made it seem like something you'd see on, Disney XD. And that's just not really what it is. When the first trailer dropped, that's what I thought it was. I thought it was mainly like a kids movie, which is fine, but it's not. The marketing team really did this dirty. Don't get it misconstrued though, this isn't like some kind of R-rated grimdark universe Transformers films for adults only. You're not gonna have titties and blow and grease or anything here. You're not gonna be watching Optimus Prime dealing with PTSD after witnessing war crimes or anything like heavy, but it is a film that can be enjoyed by anyone of all ages. Same way I feel about Puss in Boots Last Wish, Puss in Boots 2. That is a film that is just really good and just happens to be a family-friendly film. Now let's dive into the meat here. Transformers 1 is the origin story, basically, for Optimus Prime and Megatron. In this film, they're not Optimus Prime and Megatron yet. You see how they were like close friends. They started as fundamentally nothing. They were mining bots, and they go on this big buddy adventure, and it leads to what the characters eventually become. And what really works well for this movie is the characters are good. Not just Optimus and Megatron, but the surrounding characters as well. Like Bee, like Alita, like all of these characters are just fun. There's a lot of joke slinging back and forth, but not to like the criminally cringe level of Marvel where it's always there, even in moments that are supposed to be emotional. In this movie, yes, there is a ton of jokes. Yes, not all of them are going to land. But when there's an emotional beat, they don't bother to break it apart, wipe their ass with it like Marvel does by just throwing in like a little fucking half-baked AI-generated zinger. And I really appreciated that. That was very refreshing because I thought that's where this was going to go. It has a very simple plot, like it's nothing new. It's a story we've seen a million times, but now with Transformers. But it works super well because Optimus and Megatron, they build up that relationship really well in this film, and they tear it down really well too. So getting to like the climactic conclusion where we all know what's going to happen, we know what happens with Optimus and Megatron, they end up being at odds and they fight each other constantly. Getting to that point is such a good journey. There's a lot of really good action sequences in here, even like a really entertaining race that Optimus and Megatron enter, even though they can't transform. So they have to get really creative with how they try and win this race, and it's a huge fucking deal. And that entire sequence is really fucking fun. This is going to seem like an insult, but it did kind of remind me of Spy Kids 3D with that race, but done super well here. Like, I'm not using that to try and bring it down. It's just I love that. And that's always the first thing that pops in my head is that Spy Kids 3D race, that godforsaken sequence. But in Transformers 1, that race is so entertaining. Like, they're using jetpacks in the beginning. Then they're running on feet, but since they can't transform, they're getting fucking blasted by everyone. Then they have to use a couple of other really creative measures to try and get themselves back in the race. There's traps, there's obstacles. It's just a good ride. I've always had a soft spot for the Transformers property ever since I was addicted to Beast Wars as a kid growing up. So seeing a movie like this was just really refreshing. It really felt like a good time. And there's not a lot that I didn't like about it. Yeah, I wasn't, grabbing at my stomach like hardy har har laughing out loud at every joke or anything, but I was still highly entertained. And this is probably cope, but I'm hoping that now that we've had a movie about, the beginning of Cybertron and all that, maybe we can revisit games like War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron. Those games were such bangers, and it's a shame that they haven't received any kind of like remaster or anything. But I don't think that's gonna happen just because of this movie or anything. But I wanted to throw that out there. Those games fucking slapped. Anyway, though, I liked Transformers 1 a lot. It lived up to the hype. I definitely think it's worth watching, for sure. Even if you're not a fan of Transformers, it's a fun, short movie, which is rare. You usually don't have any movies under 2 hours anymore. This one is not 2 hours, which is nice. It doesn't overstay its welcome. You get exactly what you want. A lot of action, a fun story, good characters, and it all looks great because the visuals are pretty top-notch for the movie. So yeah, Transformers 1, it was good. That's about it. So yeah. For a while, I've talked about something that I feel a lot of people overlook, and it's the importance of stuntmen. Their work is some of the most important in all of movies in general, and I always have such a deep appreciation for the art, especially growing up on things like Jackie Chan movies. I've always paid very close attention to stunt work. And today I saw a video on Twitter that really just inspired me, tickled my Elmo, and made me want to just talk about this because this stunt guy is a goddamn hero, and he may very well be immortal.
3, 2, 1, action!
When I first watched this, I thought they just tossed a doll down the stairs like a dummy in order to make it look like someone got thrown down the stairs. Until the very end, I realized, holy shit, that's a living, breathing human being there that just got thrown down the escalator. The dude got fucking potato sacked, thrown out like a trash bag, a slinky going down the escalator here. So then I watched it back and I was like, okay, maybe he's in like some kind of full body suit of medieval armor to help with the impact here. Kind of like that guy who built the anti-grizzly bear suit, and he used to like get hit by trucks and shit to prove how strong it was. But then I realized he's not doing that either. He does have some kind of like padding on himself, but it's kind of light. He looks like one of Shredder's ninjas from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So while there is padding there, it's not like he's in some kind of juggernaut bomb defusal squad uniform here. It's pretty light. And it seems to be a real escalator. I don't know what you can really do to modify an escalator to make falling like that hurt less. Even if each one of those steps was a memory foam pillow, it would still hurt quite a bit because that's a long fall, and he does a few tumbles there. He like lands on the back of his neck on like that second one there. So, it seems like a pretty risky stunt, but I have no doubt this guy probably did this with a fucking smile on his face because stuntmen are actual warriors. They're fucking champions out there. I also wonder how many takes they've done of this. Like, this is probably like take number 12. It's like, hey, the first 11 were okay, but you weren't flailing around enough, and we really want like almost a neck-breaking action when you're falling, so we're gonna do this again until we can get that effect. Like they probably did this multiple times of him just getting fucking tomato canned down this escalator. It honestly kind of reminds me of that iCarly scene where Gibby falls from like the roof onto just bare concrete. We had Noah Monk on the podcast who played Gibby in that show, and he said that was done for real. A stuntman actually just fucking like belly flopped onto concrete and broke like all of his ribs. So when you see that impact of Gibby bouncing off the cement, that's a real person that happened to, and his ribs paid the ultimate fucking price for it. And I have no doubt this is probably just as real, but somehow this guy seems like okay. Gibby had to be taken off on a stretcher after that. The stuntman, he had to be like goddamn taken out there, like nearly had to call in the chopper rescue unit to airlift him out. Meanwhile, this guy probably just walked it off, rubbed some dirt in it. Like, it's crazy. Stuntmen are actually super, super impressive. And I really hope they're being paid well for John Wick 4 here. This got me even more excited for John Wick than I already was seeing a stunt like this. They didn't take some kind of easy way out with like CGI or using some kind of like animatronic or doll or something. They actually just had an absolute madman do this stunt for real. And that is super fucking cool. Anyway, this wasn't the only thing I saw on Twitter that was inspirational. I saw something that was honestly a tear-jerking moment that I kind of just want to share with all of you. This is like a little bonus that I'd like to dive into. Recently, Hezbollah has been on this absolute blow up. He's really popping off. Most people know who that is by now. He's got a very strong social media presence, and people love him. And from everything I've seen, Hezbollah seems like a really nice, likable guy. And he recently went on Mike Tyson's podcast, Mike Tyson's show, and things got real interesting real quick. Like, even just the way he's talking to him. Oh, Jesus Christ. He like blows a raspberry on him. Like, he had no idea that was a man. Honestly, it's just kind of like a wholesome thing. Like, I don't think Hezbollah was offended or anything. I don't think Mike Tyson was upset that he snuggled Hezbollah. Like, I think it's just not a big deal. It's just something silly and fun. Now, to be fair, Mike Tyson could do this same thing to me. He'd be like, hey, Charles, throw some punches at me real quick. We'll toy around a little bit. I'd be like, all right, you got it, Mr. Tyson. So I'm throwing these wet noodles at him, and then he just picks me up and starts cradling me and rocking me back and forth until I start to get drowsy, and maybe he starts, like, biting at my ear a little bit. Unsurprisingly, there were some people on Twitter that were very upset about this, and, I mean, that's par for the course. You could post the cutest picture of your dog ever, and you'll somehow outrage 1,000 people on Twitter. That's not surprising. But I do want to at least mention that I feel like in this case, this was just one of those moments where Mike Tyson made a bit of a blunder here, a boo-boo. It just feels like a truly victimless, harmless, wacky moment. Mike Tyson probably just wasn't too knowledgeable on who Hezbollah was before he was booked for the show. But it is just, it is super goofy that he picks him up and then starts like nuzzling him. And then he immediately starts chomping and biting at the ear of Hezbollah, which I think is like self-aware from Mike Tyson here. I don't think that he's just naturally drawn to like biting people's ears off or anything like that. I think that was just supposed to be like a joke, and who knows, this might have even been like a scripted, planned thing, and I've fallen hook, line, and sinker for the bait. Regardless, though, I think it is still just kind of a goofy, fun moment, I suppose, that I thought was worth at least mentioning. That's really about it, so yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to say they finally done it. They've finally not ruined an IP with a terrible adaptation. At least not yet. We're only one episode in, but I'm already twirling my shirt over my head right now because the first episode of The Last of Us show wasn't unwatchably, insufferably horrible like most adaptations are these days. It was actually good. Finally, we've got another adaptation that is faithful to the source material and also not an absolute stinky pile of garbage. Again, we're only one episode deep, so there's still plenty of time for them to fly off the rails and ruin it. Maybe in episode 2 they start introducing aliens, episode 3 they bring in ghosts, like, they could fully tank this show, but right now, episode 1 is absolutely fantastic. And this has been kind of a roller coaster for me, because when the first trailer dropped, I was cautiously optimistic that it'd be good, but then the more the showrunner spoke, the less confident I became. They did the worst PR run for this show I could have imagined. The showrunner would say things like, oh, dying in The Last of Us game is just pixels on a screen. It's going to be so much different in the show, and like kind of belittling the property, like the source material, for no reason. And then they'd also celebrate the fact that they instructed their talent to not play the games for some reason. Just a lot of things they'd say that made me scratch my head and go, why would that make me excited as a fan of the first Last of Us game? I still don't get that Galaxy Brains strategy, this like chess master's PR move where like the way to get people hype is by letting people know that they didn't play the games. I don't get it. Like, hey, Last of Us fans, we made sure none of our talent played the games. Hoorah! You know, it just doesn't make sense to me. But regardless, despite all that, they pulled it together and made an absolutely spectacular episode 1. And it's so refreshing because you may remember, you know, in the Bible there was that period where the Lord flooded the earth. Well, we've right now entered that age again, but instead of flooding the earth with water, he's flooded the earth with absolutely dog shit adaptations from other IPs that are beloved. So we've had things like the Halo show, the Resident Evil Netflix show, Witcher Blood Origin, Velma, like it just doesn't stop. And now we have a new adaptation that's not shit. Like, the flood may be over. Maybe we're finally going to get to an era where adaptations are faithfully done. And it's not like this is the only one. There have been some great ones recently, like Arcane as well as Cyberpunk Edge Runner. But the point is, this one's great, and I'm happy about it. I've said from the beginning it'd be very hard to fuck up a Last of Us show if you just follow the game one-to-one. And for the most part, they do follow it pretty one-to-one in certain cases, but they add a lot of their own elements to the show, so it's not just a carbon copy of the game. And I actually really liked a lot of what they put into this. It wasn't just like ham-fisted, useless details that don't matter. They really crafted quite a bit to flesh out the universe pre-breakout. Like, they build the world around it pretty well. Like, they give context of like the fungus and stuff where it goes back to an old interview going over things. They then also transition into showing the relationship between Joel and Sarah more. In the game, it's an iconic intro, and I still think the intro is the best that gaming has to offer. The Last of Us intro is a masterpiece, and the show does a fucking amazing job of capturing that and also bringing you to it. In the game, it gets very quickly to the truck, going through the city and all the chaos and all that. It takes you into the action pretty quickly because it's a game, and they don't want the player to get bored or start to lose interest. Usually when a game's really heavy-handed on cutscenes, some people like to whine and complain like, oh, this shit is just watching a movie. It's just an interactive movie, not a game. Boo, throwing tomatoes. So the game quickly gets you to like the action parts to get the player hooked and interested. Well, the show has the benefit of not needing to worry about that kind of bitching, so it actually spends a good chunk of time just showcasing Sarah and Joel's relationship as well as focusing on things that Sarah was doing right before the breakout happened, and I think that really adds to the overall, like, greatness of that iconic intro, because the show, I am so happy to say, follows that intro really well. It puts the camera in the truck, just like in the games, as they're driving through, all kinds of like fucking wild shit's happening around them, people getting blown up, eaten, things going to shit everywhere, and it's capturing that insanity, that madness, all from the perspective of inside the truck, and it is fucking great. I'm super happy they didn't try and get like stupid with it and try and make it something different. Like, I'm glad they just took what the game did and made that magic happen again in the show's format. I think they did a really great job with the intro. I have legitimately zero complaints about how all of that played out. That was one of the big things I was worried about. Like, how can you possibly recreate that scene in a show and do it even nearly as well as the game? But they did. I'd say it's on par with the game's intro for sure. Now, there was one other major change that they announced they'd be making in the show that is very different in the game. And a lot of people were pretty upset about it, but I was pretty indifferent. And now seeing it in the show, I do think the change is fine. That was their decision to remove spores entirely. If you played the game, you know the role spores play. In the show, they're not using spores. Now they're using like these little tendrils, like these little feely finger things that pop out of their mouth and they transmit the infection to each other like that. But it's not spores anymore. And I don't really care. It doesn't change things drastically, in my opinion, to have it be little fucking wieners popping out of their mouth like tickling people for the infection versus it being the spores. I didn't care too much when I heard that, but I know a lot of people were upset. After seeing in episode 1 here, even though it didn't play a major role yet, I can see that it's not going to be something super huge. At least I don't think it will. I don't think the decision to change from spores to tendrils is necessarily going to be that big of an issue that's going to cause problems for the narrative. So I'm not bothered by it, but I do fully understand people that are. In the game, spores, they get airborne, so you'd have to wear the masks in order to protect yourselves. Well, since there's no longer spores in the show, you don't really need to worry about that. So there's not a ton of like mask up moments kind of thing. And to me, that doesn't bother me too much, but it does make it much more like a normal zombie show where the only way to get the infection is through getting, groped by the mouth tendrils stuffed. Like, I do get it. I understand that the airborne spores in the game make it a little more unique from just standard zombie schlock. But in the show, I just don't see what that would have added to even bother with it, because you just put on a mask and all of a sudden everything's back to normal, right? So, I'm sure they could have played around with it, but let's think about it in the game's way. Like, in the game, it wasn't necessarily about, like, avoiding the infection because the spores are everywhere. It was really just all about the characters and their relationship and going through this fucking brutal world. So I feel like it just doesn't change a whole lot to just take the spores out and make it more about, like, direct transmission contact in the show. Now, maybe it gets bad later on, like maybe this does have a huge detrimental effect on the story going forward. I don't see that happening, but I do think it is possible. We're still obviously very early here, but right now, I'm not bothered by that change. Overall, I just feel like they've done an outstanding job adapting this property and also adding to it. The extra stuff they put in here that wasn't present in the game doesn't feel like extra stuff. It feels very good. It feels very at home in the universe. Like, it fleshes out the story even more. It adds to it. So, I think they've just done a really great job so far. They've also added a couple new characters. Don't know exactly the size role they're going to play in the story going forward. I also hope that this serves as an example to all the major studios out there that keep just eating up IP like fucking Galactus and then just wiping their ass with it, producing some of the worst adaptations imaginable. I hope they'll look at this and the success of The Last of Us show, at least episode 1, and see that the reward is far greater if you just put in actual effort to adapt the properties the way they should be, faithful to the source material, and even bring on the people responsible for its creation in the first place. Neil Druckmann is clearly on board for this show, and it is very obvious. What should have been a no-brainer to absolutely everybody has apparently become super rare. You shouldn't be giving your IP to people that don't know anything about it and actively fucking dislike it, like with the Halo TV show. I'm hopeful that The Last of Us show will continue to be this good. Hopefully it even only gets better from this point forward. I'm actually very excited to see more of it, so just wanted to talk about this because what a nice, pleasant surprise. A breath of fresh air with a great video game adaptation. That's about it. So yeah. Last week, the Earth stood still and stopped spinning with the release of probably the worst movie this year we'll see, Borderlands. God rest the wallet of anyone who wasted money on that pile of absolute garbage. This week, the world was blessed with an actual great film, Alien Romulus. I like the Alien franchise. I haven't really liked a lot of what's been coming from this property, both in games and movies. The last Alien game I remember really liking was Alien Isolation. And the last movie I really remember liking, whoo-wee! That's, we're going back a couple decades. But I always have such a fondness for this property. Even though I keep getting fed shit, I can't even be mad at the chef. I'll briefly defend my position on that before glazing Alien Romulus, because I think the film is excellent. But Prometheus I've always been somewhat lukewarm on. There's things I like about it. I love the whole engineer idea. However, I just think overall the movie has so much silliness to it that it kind of ruins some really great concepts. Like the iconic scene with Meredith running in a straight line away from the spaceship that's tumbling at her like a tire. All she had to do was run left or right. It's rolling at her like a tire. It's not like a fucking tornado that's unpredictable. You know, it's not like a football running back who's all of a sudden going to make like a sharp cut to a side. All she had to do was run left or right, and she would have survived. Yet somehow this highly intelligent scientist decides to just run straight and then gets flattened by it. Even when it comes to crocodiles, they tell you to run in like a zigzag away from it. It was so stupid. I guess she thought it was like a heat-seeking missile coming at her or something. And there's other things, obviously, I could point to, but I'm not going to. I don't want to spend too much time on this topic. But Alien Covenant, I thought was just atrocious. I was very generous on the moist meter, which I regret. I should have been more harsh, because I didn't like it at the time, and I certainly don't like it now. I still remember thinking how dumb it was how these scientists arrive at this new planet, and the first thing they do is basically just strip down to their birthday suit. They come out there like they're spring breaking. Throughout the movie, they just make the dumbest decisions ever. You completely forget they're supposed to be smart people. Because it's like me on that planet. Like, oh, you're telling me I can breathe here? Oh, I'll just take it all in then with no suit. Like, not even thinking about, like, other possible problems with, like, pathogens or something. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on it. But there was a lot of things in Alien Covenant I thought were just terrible. There was a few things I liked about it. I still think David is a really cool character. But man, it's just fully unrealized potential with what could have been offered there. Anyway, though, let's talk about Alien Romulus now, because this film, I think, is fantastic. And it's such a breath of fresh air in this franchise. You're going to hear everybody say this, I imagine, but it's super true. This film really does take the series back to its roots. And multiple times while watching this movie, I was like, shit, that feels like what I experienced in Alien Isolation. And I looked it up. Apparently, the director loved Alien Isolation, and it was like a big inspiration for this movie. And that's amazing. Like, you can actually feel it. It's so good. So they actually make the xenomorph scary again. Who would have guessed that that would be a successful formula? So it takes a less is more approach with this movie, where it's not just shoving xenomorphs in your face every possible opportunity. Towards the end of the movie, I don't want to get into spoilers. They show you a lot more towards the end of the movie. I'll say that much. But for most of it, the main things you're seeing are face huggers. Like, that is the main problem that this small crew is dealing with. So the story is this small crew looking to get off this planet, find a potential out with this derelict ship that's above their planet. And when they arrive, things get hairy. It goes tits up quickly. Blood and gore all over the place, as you would expect. And it's quite a pickle they find themselves in, unable to leave the ship because of so many things going wrong, and they're on a very tight timetable before imminent doom. Xenomorphs and all kinds of other things. And I really like that it's so... I don't want to use the word small because it's not small, but it's not like Alien Covenant or Prometheus. This is all taking place in a single spot. This ship. It feels much more claustrophobic. It focuses much more on building tension. This movie does a great job of building tension. I am super pleasantly surprised, because I thought it would probably just be a bunch of people getting, fucking insta-gibbed like it's TF2 by these xenomorphs as often as possible. That's not the case with this movie at all. They really let shit simmer, and it is so nice. Now, one thing I think this movie doesn't do very well is its characters. It's a small crew, so I really thought they'd have ample opportunity to flesh them out, to make you care. Because if you don't get invested in the characters, you just don't really care. You're just kind of waiting for them to die in a pretty flashy way. So most of the characters I don't think are interesting. In fact, a couple of them you just can't care about at all. You know they're going to die, and you're just waiting for how. And then the other ones are just kind of bland and not fleshed out. However, I do like the main character, Rain, and I do like her friend, Andy. I don't want to get into too much detail about their relationship, but it is a very interesting dynamic that I think is super, super strong. I cared about both of those characters, which is great. I just wish I would have cared about all of them, at least to some degree. Which I understand is a difficult thing to do, especially in a movie like this, but I just remember, and maybe it's just been too long now, but I remember in the original Alien and Aliens film, I got a lot more from the characters, so when I saw them in peril, it was more of an investment, and it just helped amplify the intensity of the scenes. But again, it's not like I think the characters are bad here, and they're certainly better than Alien Covenant and Prometheus, aside from a couple of exceptions. So it is an improvement for sure. And I really do like Rain and Andy. I think they were great. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, but I'm not going to get into spoiler territory. But it's something that I think is unique and very well realized for the movie. I also really appreciated that the characters aren't lobotomites. It's about time. It's been too long since an Alien movie had characters making smart decisions. In fact, there's really no moments in this film where a character makes a bad choice, or a choice that doesn't make some level of sense. Every character here is making smart choices, even the ones that I expected to just do something super stupid. Off the top of my head, I can't even think of anything dumb. The only choices that were made that weren't optimal were the ones that were made under, like, intense duress, so it makes sense. There's just not a lot that I disliked about the movie. There are some specific scenes that I thought were pretty weak. There's one in particular I really want to talk about. This is going to be a quick spoiler. It is a big spoiler moment, though, so fair warning, but I have to mention this, because in the theater, I actually did this right here. I actually hit one of these, because it was so weird and out of nowhere. There is a scene towards the end of the movie where zero gravity has been activated and they need to go up. So Rain and Andy jump, and they're going up. However, there is a gravity purge coming where what happens is it's going to turn gravity back on shortly, and they're getting like a countdown letting them know that it's coming. So Andy and Rain they've propelled themselves upward. They're extremely high up, going up an elevator shaft, and Andy manages to grab onto the ladder right before the gravity purge kicks in, reigniting gravity. Rain, however, is a little too far away, So she's unable to grab it, and gravity flicks back on, so now she's starting to fall. She's plummeting back towards the bottom of the ship through this elevator shaft. It's terminal velocity. She's going to die unless something happens, but Andy can't do anything. He's way up on that ladder, so she's falling, and it's absolutely going to kill her. And then out of nowhere, a xenomorph with its fucking tail stops her fall, grabs her, and brings her to the side. It saves her life. The xenomorph saves her life. The fucking thing was fishing for like a Good Samaritan award or something, and then it like brings her up to it, and kind of just they stare at each other, and then it yells at her. It starts screaming, like in classic xenomorph fashion. But it saved her to do that, and that gives Andy ample time to come and kill the xenomorph, which of course gets her out of danger. But I don't understand why it did that at all. Like, it was damaged because it had been shot earlier, so I kind of surmised that maybe it was like revenge. So the xenomorph really wanted revenge, and instead of just letting gravity kill her, it wanted to do it. I think that's what it was going for. But in the moment, I was like, wow, is this like the first friendly xenomorph or something? I thought it was actually going to start speaking to her, being like, run, or something. Like, I thought we were going to go in like a totally different direction, because it was so out of nowhere for the xenomorph to save her life, to, I guess, try and kill her itself with its own, two hands. It's just a really bad scene, I think, actually. I thought it was really dumb. It just felt like they had written themselves into a corner. Like, it's a really cool scene, a really intense moment with them trying to get to the ladder right before gravity kicks back on, and she doesn't make it in time, and there's really nothing that can save her. There is no outs until a xenomorph comes out of nowhere to do it. I just thought it was stupid. I really did not like that scene. There's also a couple of other things there, like throughout the movie, that I was like, ooh, not the best work on that one. But overall, I really enjoyed it. So that's the end of the spoilers. I'm not going to get into spoilers again, but I had to mention that. I really did. I don't know if anyone else has mentioned that at all. Maybe I'm super dumb and didn't understand something about it, but that scene I was not a fan of. The rest of the movie I am, though. I love the tension building. I love that they finally made the xenomorph scary again. I love a lot of the set pieces. It is just a really great movie. Even if you don't like the Alien franchise, I actually think you'll still just like this movie in general. This movie stands on its own two legs just fine without just like fan service for previous movies or anything. It's just really good. There's jump scares in here, which I definitely didn't expect, and the jump scares I didn't think were cringe or anything. They were well utilized. There's also something towards the end of the movie that really caught me off guard. So I imagine some people probably might be put off by this, but there's a couple moments where the movie could have ended and it would have been a fine conclusion, but then it goes forward to bring even more danger and even more like stakes. And I actually really like that. So you never really get to, relax. You just keep getting more and more, rough situations, and how the fuck are the characters going to deal with this? And it's really good. I just thought Alien Romulus was an absolute treat. If I was to plug it in the moist meter, I'd give it like a 82%. Great movie. I was very happy to see that there's some potential here for some good Alien movies going forward. It's lovely to see people start to realize that. That's about it. See ya. It's time we have a talk about Killer Bean, so go ahead and pop a squat by the fireplace. As you all well know, Killer Bean is one of my favorite action movies ever made. I think it's up there with the greats like The Raid and John Wick. It is genuinely an animated masterpiece. As I'm sure you're no doubt aware, it's coming back. Killer Bean Forever, which is the movie I'm talking about, it's over a decade old. And now it is being revived by Jeff. Jeff is bringing it back as a full series. And he recently released a video pretty much announcing it. It's more of like a teaser, letting people know, hey, Killer Bean's coming back, and I'm taking the condom back off, and we're coming in raw again. And I enjoyed it. It was a good little animated short, a nice appetizer for the fans, giving them a taste of greatness, and just letting you know, hey, 2020's been kind of shitty, but, Killer Bean's immune to the coronavirus thanks to his training at the Shadow Bean Agency, of course. So Killer Bean's still coming back. And yeah, it's just something to look forward to. But what I want to talk about is the amount of times I have been spammed with Killer Bean Returns, like telling me, ordering me, demanding that I watch it on stream, twitch.tv/moistcritical, has been fucking wild. I swear to God, if a nuclear bomb detonated in the country, I wouldn't have known about it as quickly as I knew about Killer Bean coming back. And I do appreciate when people let me know about important things like this, but for Killer Bean specifically, I'm like on the fucking forefront of information for that franchise. I am in the show. I'm literally in the new Killer Bean series, so I know it's coming back, and I knew the new trailer had dropped because I fucking keep up with it. I mean, with no exaggeration, I've gotten at least 5 or 10,000 emails all about Killer Bean coming back, asking me if I know about it, telling me I have to watch it, and then during streams, good God, I've had to watch Killer Bean on stream 8 times now due to an overwhelming flood of demands. And I mean demands. I'm talking fucking caps locked, snotty-nosed, aggressive, starting to get angry so they slap their own Mountain Dew over their keyboard because they're getting upset that I haven't watched Killer Bean Returns for the 9th time in the last 2 days. I mean, it's been crazy. It's like in Game of Thrones. When the church gets blown up with wildfire, that's my streams. But instead of wildfire destroying the streets, it's Killer Bean madness, like the essence of Killer Bean mania. It has been truly remarkable. And I understand not everyone's gonna have like perfect attendance to my streams or be there from start to finish every time, so I don't mind talking about it quite a bit and watching it even a few times, but this has been a whole new beast right here, so I just wanted to address it in a video. Yes, I know it's coming back. I am in the series. My character comes in a little bit later, and I have seen the Killer Bean Returns trailer more times than anyone else on this planet. I'm like that super fan for Captain Marvel that's seen Captain Marvel 144 times, but for Killer Bean in my case. I've probably spent more time watching the Killer Bean Returns trailer than Jeff spent making the fucking thing. I've seen it a lot. I've seen it. Now, I didn't just want to talk about Killer Bean. There's something else I want to talk about. Not too long ago, I mentioned that we'll be giving away a nice guitar and mic for Real To Me covers. And we're actually doing a little bit more than that. What we expected when we announced this was there'd be like 6 people covering it in their basement with like bad lighting and it'd look like a fucking snuff film, but it'd be cute because they're playing the song. But what ended up happening is we had all of these extremely high quality reimaginings of the song into different genres and different styles, and it's been fucking incredible. That really shocked Troy and I. So we decided to do something a little bit different. For the guitar giveaway and the mic giveaway, those will still be going to the people, well, the winner of the people who did it exactly how we initially wrote it up, where it's just a in-person recording of the guitar cover or vocal cover like this. This guy did an absolutely fucking great job covering it on guitar. Because the way we drew it up was initially we were picturing you just be hanging out in your room, fucking Budweisers all over the desk and just jamming out to the song on the guitar or singing it. So we're gonna keep that for the mic and guitar giveaway. But then for these extremely creative covers of the song that totally change it and make it something entirely unique, I'm just gonna comment on the video and try and get in touch with you to get some information so I can send you a couple $100 each for some of these because you fucking earned it. Some of these are just absolutely incredible. Yeah, this one's just fucking great. Very much sounds like some Deftones vibes going on here. He plays every instrument. Have expected him to bust out a fucking theremin or some bongos, maybe a recorder or a melodica, and incorporate all of that in here and make it sound great. Really impressive stuff. And the guy has a band called Dymphonic, I think that's how you say it, which is like this fusion dance between Tool and Deftones, but like a perfectly done fusion dance. It's really impressive music, so really just great shit all around from this guy. This guy's clearly super talented. Now I'll be linking all of these in a pinned comment below the video if you want to see them all in their full glory. This one here gave me a very strong flavor of Persona 5 soundtrack with a slight sniff of that never-ending YouTube stream called like Lo-Fi Beats to Study To. I don't quite remember what it's called, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. That shit's like one of the most popular live streams ever. Just another really good and interesting spin on the original song. Really fucking liked it. This one's got kind of like a Paint It Black acoustic version sound going on to it that I really fucking dig. It's like kind of dark vibes, almost as if he's singing this song from a dungeon about a body pillow. I don't know. I really enjoyed this one quite a bit. I really like the backing melody of it, and I really like what he did with the acoustic guitar. I'm not a dude that even likes acoustic. I think there's only like fucking 4 notes ever really played on an acoustic guitar anymore, so I typically find it kind of boring, but this guy completely changed my perspective of what you can do with some acoustic music. I don't know what genre of music this is, but it sounds really fucking nice. It sounds like as if Billie Eilish was performing at a club, but she couldn't play that loud, she had to keep it down because people were trying to sleep. It sounds absolutely wonderful. Now, like I said, I'll be reaching out to some of these people here to try and give them a few $100s for these performances here, because I think they've absolutely earned it, and I'm really touched that so many people seem to have liked the song enough to want to make it their own. I think that's just so fucking great, and both Troy and I have really enjoyed listening to all of them. Now, again, the winner of the guitar giveaway and the mic giveaway will be announced on the Gentleman official Instagram page, which I'll also link below. And we'll also be talking about some of these unique covers of the song, letting you know who's getting money from that as well. So again, just a huge thank you, and some of these have just been so incredibly good. So a big thank you there, and yeah, I've seen Killer Bean as well. So don't feel the need to be like fighting on the front lines for justice of Killer Bean and letting me know, because I swear to God, I've seen it a fucking ton of times now. That's about it. So yeah. Still, to date, one of the biggest surprises I've ever had going to a horror film was actually enjoying the first Smile movie. I went into that thinking that it might just be fun bad, but that it stood no chance of being anything even close to decent. Because it had like a TikTok influence and this and that. I thought the odds were stacked against it, but I walked out of that theater smiling. Like, I thought it was just so good. Like, it was such a pleasant surprise. It takes a super generic concept that I had already seen a movie like in the past. Truth or Dare did something very similar with like the smiling right before death thing. And I thought this would just be another one of those throwaway slop horror films that I'd forget about 15 seconds after leaving the theater. But nah, Smile stuck with me. It's not like those other things where they just throw together something shitty, a few jump scares, and call it a wrap, you know, something like The Bag Man, or any of those other awful premises. Because everything gets a horror film these days. Literally the dumbest ideas ever get horror movies because they're cheap to make and usually turn a profit. So you have some shit come out like The Backwards Walk Man. If you see his cheeks coming at you, it's already too late. If his butt's facing you, you're already dead. But all this to say, I liked Smile. So I had a lot of expectations here on Smile 2, probably unfairly so. Yet, it exceeded them. Smile 2 is actually better than the first one. And people in stream chat that had seen it yesterday were telling me that much. They were saying that Smile 2 is actually better than the first one, and I agree. There are things I liked more in the first one, but overall I think Smile 2 is just a stronger film in general. So let me just go ahead and start glazing it like a donut real quick, but I do want to talk about some complaints that do get a little spoilery, but I'll get get to those towards the end. Before even really getting into the meat of this, I do want to make a mention up top here, because I have to know that I'm not crazy. Like, maybe I'm possessed by a fucking sound demon or something, but this is the loudest movie I've ever heard in my life. I saw Smile 2 in a Dolby screening, which I've done for tons of movies that have come out, and I've never had something be this loud. Like, I'm talking anytime something happens on screen, it's like 5 sticks of dynamite get shoved into my ears, like it's some kind of Tom and Jerry gag. Like, even something like the main character opening a can of mints sounded like 5 dump trucks being thrown off of a cliff into a pile of broken glass and nitroglycerin. Everything was so loud. Now, I think the sound design and the audio was great in the film. I think they did a really good job with it. Like, I do want to make it clear, like, I think they crushed it in the sound department, but like, maybe the levels were a little too high in the theater I was in or something, where it became, like, actually painful. Like, there's a scene in the very beginning where a guy throws a sword, and it was already really loud, but he throws that sword, and holy shit, it was like I was back at a club standing in front of the speaker. Like, that sword hits the ground, and it was like someone clapped their hands against my ears. Like what Jackie Chan would do in a kung fu movie to stun someone. It was crazy how loud some moments were here. Now, first and foremost, if you haven't seen the first Smile movie, you should know that Smile is built upon tension and jump scares. It has an unapologetic use of jump scares. It's not ashamed, and it actually gets very creative with the jump scares. Most of the time, when someone tries that shit with like a boo and like a really loud noise, like I'll just sigh and roll my eyes. It's really not exciting, and it's kind of lame. And for a long time, people have criticized horror movies' reliance on jump scares for its scare factor, and rightfully so, because it is lazy. Smile 2, though, and the first Smile by extension, they take jump scares and they use them so well. So they build tension, effectively build tension. And instead of like releasing the tension with a jump scare, it just keeps building the tension, and you're like hoping for a jump scare, and then when it comes, somehow you're still not expecting it, and it hits. It actually hits. Their jump scares here are so creative. Now, they don't reinvent the condom with them or anything. The jump scares still have like the loud noise, scary face kind of thing going on, but the way that it's utilized is so good. It's like a pick and roll in basketball. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows pick and rolls are coming, but if you know how to use them well, holy shit, are they effective. And I think Smile 2 uses jump scares super well because it does the hard stuff of building tension and actually getting you invested and like kind of on the edge of your seat this whole time. So because of that, they're able to put a jump scare in there and have it not be cringe. And another thing that helps is characters that you actually care about. So when you're watching Smile 2, I think Naomi Scott does an incredible performance here. Like, she has mastered the teardrop coming from her eyes with like 1,000-yard stare in shock, and she just sells the peril and like the hopelessness and the fear so well. Really, everybody in the movie does. Like, I was really surprised by how good everyone's performance was in the movie. So I did want to make a special note of that. But the characters do have you invested, and it's not like they give you a ton of information about them. Like, they're not fully fleshed out characters, but what's there is enough. Now, the movie follows pretty much an identical storyline to the first one, almost beat for beat, which is one of my complaints. I wish they had done more with maybe giving us a little bit more on, the actual monster itself. Like, I understand keeping it a mystery, that is the most effective thing you can do with it, but it really does follow almost the exact same roadmap that the first one laid out. It just follows it better, like it's a more exciting ride. But I do wish they had explored other ideas a bit more. So our main character is a troubled pop star who's gone through something traumatic in the past. She's had issues with substance abuse, and she unfortunately watches one of her friends kill himself with the smile demon possessing him, which passes it on to her. This is all in the trailer. This isn't a spoiler or anything. So now it's her battling against this evil. And a lot of the things that are in place narratively were the same things that were in place in the first film, which is fine because it works and it's good. But like I said, I wish they explored a couple of other ideas and maybe did a little bit more with the universe and world building. But to counter my own complaint here, like I'm in fucking debate club, they did do something very different for the intro of this movie. They did a single take one continuous shot action sequence. Like, I'm talking guns blazing, knives out, blood, gore, like, all of that action sequence that felt like I had wandered into the wrong film for a moment. It was good. Like, they did a great job with that whole sequence. And it's very interesting how it ties into the rest of the movie. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I thought that was exceptional. And that had me hooked immediately. I just wish they had more moments like that where, like, it didn't stay the exact same course as the first film. But it's not like the biggest complaint because it still worked very well. I still really, really liked this movie. And since I mentioned that intro sequence, I do want to just point out the cinematography in this movie, I thought stood out. Like, I thought there were some really creative shots. Like, there were some really good shots and some good spins on some, like, classic shots that you've seen a million times in other horror movies that you just wipe your ass with in those films. Well, here they take those same kind of shots and they put like a nice little creative spin on it that works super well, that helps elevate the whole thing. Especially considering that a large part of Smile is playing with people's perception of what's real and what's fake. Since the Smile demon gets inside of the victim's brain and starts pulling levers and shit like that worm out of Courage the Cowardly Dog, it is changing what is real and what's fake, as well as just the flow of time. Like, how long has it been? Which is really fun as someone watching the film trying to figure out what's real and what's fake. Oh, that must have been real because of this. If it was fake, then how the fuck did she end up over there? You know, that couldn't make any sense if it was fake. No, how could that possibly be fake when I have a boner? That doesn't add up, you know? Like, it's a fun little game that the audience gets to play of figuring out, well, what's in her head and what's reality. And the film plays with that super well. And I think the way that it's shot helps with that too. And it's something I really appreciate. I really like the narrative to this, even though it is just kind of retreading the first one. I just still think it hits. And I like the pop star spin on it because then she's constantly surrounded by people in public. It allows for some really interesting new kind of horror scares that they try. Because in most horror films, you have the standard like haunted house shit or just like really dark shit. Smile 2, pretty much all the scary stuff happens in broad daylight, lights on. Almost nothing happens in the dark. And that's pretty fun. That's pretty cool. I also was a little worried that the pop star angle would be overplayed a bit in this film, where it focused too much on like pop music and like musical performances and stuff, and I thought it would take away from the rest, the shit that people actually care about, which is the horror. It doesn't. The pop music does clearly play a role here, but it doesn't like overstay its welcome or anything, and when the songs come on, like, it's fun, and usually something happens during it. So it's not like it's a totally separate thing. Kind of like in Trap, one of the big critiques I had of it is that it felt more like a concert first and foremost before like a movie. I was a little concerned that maybe this might have something similar. No. The pop music is there. It's a small portion, and it's not like overused or anything. It's not like the bread and butter of the movie by any means. So if anyone was worried about that, let me just go ahead and put your mind at ease there. I think Smile 2 is just really, really solid. I thought it was fucking great. But I do want to get into a few complaints now. I already mentioned the one where I feel like it was just kind of the same thing again, but better. That is still one that I have, but my biggest complaint is actually the ending. But I just feel like the movie's ending was the most predictable ending that you would have imagined when you saw that the character was a pop star. And it's something tons of horror movies have done in the past. That, well, now the genie's really out of the lamp and everyone's got it. The bad thing's everywhere now. And I just don't like that. I think that is so overdone. I recognize that when it comes to Smile, there's nothing necessarily new about it. It just executes everything better than what else came before it. However, in this ending, I don't think it did it better. It did it the same as tons of other horror movies that end with Pandora's box is open, now everyone's affected. It just did that, and not really in a new way. So I was kind of underwhelmed there. I get it conceptually, like it's a strong conclusion. I just couldn't help but feel less than satisfied. Especially when you consider that the ending of the film also nullifies a lot of the film's best moments. This is a big spoiler. I'm going to try and tiptoe around it as to not ruin this. But the way the movie ends, it kind of rewrites and undoes a lot of the best scenes from the film, like retroactively. And that kind of sucks. Like, it kind of takes the wind out of its own sail, which I just really didn't like. You know how everyone hates that trope, that cliche of, it was all a dream, that kind of thing? Well, I felt the same way with the ending of this movie. I just really felt like, man, that really kind of takes a lot of the impact away, what you've just done here. So, hopefully I didn't, like, say too much there that spoiled it for anyone, but I just felt really let down a bit by the direction the ending went. Like, I'm talking the very end, like the last 5 or 6 minutes, like not long. I think everything up until like the last 5, 6, whatever minutes was so strong. And narratively, I even think the last 5 and 6 minutes is a strong conclusion, like from a plot perspective, but from a viewing perspective, it just really feels like, man, that really does take away a lot of the fucking oomph with what we had been experiencing up until this point. So that's by far my biggest complaint, but I don't think it like makes this movie that much worse in my eyes or anything. I still think this is a great film. I still think it is better than the first one. So overall, I think Smile 2 is 100% worth seeing. I think it is so good. So I definitely recommend it. I liked it a lot. And yeah, that's about it. So, yeah. Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of the all-time great shows. But unfortunately, it's a property that has been abused by some truly evil scoundrels over the years. There's been a complete failure and an insult to its legacy in a live-action movie that M. Night Shyamalan directed over a decade ago. There's been a handful of unforgivably trash games, even as recently as a month ago with something called Quest for Balance, which is a $50 super stinker that was shat out from the rancid, vile bowels of Game Mill. It's more torturous than a saw trap. The goddamn Brazen Bull was more humane form of punishment than playing Avatar Quest for Balance. And when Netflix unveiled a few years back that they were going to be trying again for a live-action Avatar, a lot of people rolled their eyes and wet their pants, going to bed very concerned and scared because no one that's a fan of Avatar wants a repeat of the 2010 movie that M. Night Shyamalan made. Yesterday, the trailer finally dropped for it, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if it was going to be a blessing or a curse. And I feel as though I'm the only one qualified to opine on the quality of a live-action Avatar because I believe I'm the only person on this fucking planet to see the 2010 live-action Last Airbender movie multiple times. I exposed myself to more radiation than fucking Chernobyl ever was by watching this movie multiple times. I made a whole video on it, breaking it down. It is abhorrent. You can really feel the hate that M. Night Shyamalan has for the property. In every single shot, there's just this miasma of agony that is just oozing out of the film. It's something truly special. So I honestly don't think there's a single dimension in the multiverse where the Netflix Avatar would somehow be worse than the 2010 movie. You couldn't try to make it that bad. They couldn't even pronounce Aang's name correctly in that movie. They called him Ong. So I'm happy to report, rejoice Avatar fans, that the Netflix trailer for Avatar live action is pretty good. It's certainly better than the 2010 movie. I know it's a low bar to set, but it clears that for sure. It does seem like they have a team together behind it that cares. I did enjoy it. Now, I do want to dive in a bit more in depth on my feelings about this project going forward. I am still a bit skeptical on how good it's going to turn out. Many of you might not remember this, but 3 years ago, the creators of Avatar: The Last Airbender actually walked away from the live-action project, citing some creative differences internally that they couldn't reconcile. So that makes me a little concerned because they're not going with the creator's vision, and their vision is the one that led to one of the most iconic cartoons ever made. That usually doesn't bode well. Now get out your pen and paper because I'm going to take you to class real quick. Let's cite a very recent example here. The success of the live-action One Piece. A production I thought was doomed for failure. I was bah-humbogging about that bad boy for many moons. I didn't think you could take an anime and translate it to live-action successfully. I was wrong. And one of the main reasons why I was so wrong is because I didn't realize how involved the creator of One Piece, Oda, was in the production of the live action, and it's very clear that that was the biggest difference maker. You can feel Oda's presence throughout the entirety of the live action One Piece in order to steer the ship properly and make a very good show that stands on its own two legs even outside of the One Piece anime. So people that have never seen the anime still really like the live action. For example, Danny. Danny never watched the anime, he loved the live action, and it got him into the anime, which is something I didn't even know would be possible. So clearly having the creator of the property you're adapting involved is extremely important. Stand back, I'm dunking from the free throw line with this next example I'm dropping on you here. Live action Cowboy Bebop from Netflix. The live action Cowboy Bebop is an absolute disaster, a fucking full-blown Category 5 catastrophe of a show. And guess what? The creator of Cowboy Bebop was not involved in the production of it in any way, shape, or form. And look at how it turned out. It is horrible. That piece of garbage is so foul, if I took a shit on it, my poop would be embarrassed to be on top of it. It is bad. So the fact that here, the creators of Avatar threw their hands up and said, "Bye-bye, pussies, we're not doing this, we're out," is a little concerning, because it makes me nervous with the direction that they're going to take this. Like, this could turn into some kind of fucking sci-fi show. They might try and make this Stranger Things, but with airbending. Like, who knows? So, while I do think the trailer is fine, like, it looks good, I'm still nervous. Another thing I've talked about a lot on stream, and I still firmly stand by this, if you're just taking a animated show, Avatar in this case, and translating it one-to-one to live action, it feels worthless. You already have a beautiful piece of animation that tells an incredible story. Taking that and then just putting a new coat of paint on it just doesn't really seem to do much. Kind of like Lion King, where they took the Lion King animation and then turned it into a pseudo live action movie with the CGI Lion King, which is basically just the same movie, but with CGI instead of, 2D. And it's fucking worthless. Like that, it's entirely worthless. I don't think it adds any value. It's just a cash grab. So if that's the direction they're going, it wouldn't exactly be the most satisfying thing in the world just to see the cartoon I already love being played out again, but with real people. It's not going to enhance it. Like, things that you can do in the animated medium simply cannot be done well in the live action medium, period. The reason One Piece, for example, works so well in the live action and the anime is the One Piece live action is pretty different from the anime. It goes, of course, down the similar story beats, but it executes everything differently, and it breathes new kind of life into One Piece that wasn't necessarily there in the same episodes that it was adapting from the anime. So Oda being there and recognizing that just going one-to-one with it's not exactly going to hit the same way, changed it a little bit and made it really enjoyable. Now, of course, the show hasn't premiered yet. It's not out. I'm just speculating. Maybe they don't just go one-to-one with it, though the trailer makes me believe they are going to try and do a lot of exactly the same stuff from the cartoon into the live action, but maybe they're just doing that to show that they actually do have a passionate team behind there. That's entirely possible. It's not out yet, so I don't know exactly what the direction is. I'm just stating that I'm still a bit concerned knowing that the actual creators of the show left the project over creative differences. That's a pretty big deal, in my opinion. But it could still turn out great. I hope it turns out great. I don't want another bad Avatar live action. That would suck some serious shit. So, that's my full thoughts on that. I do also want to briefly mention something that's really flown under the radar, unfortunately. Netflix also released the teaser trailer for the live-action Yu Yu Hakusho, and I haven't seen anyone talk about that yet. This is something I was extremely skeptical on being good in any capacity because Netflix adaptions, for the most part, are huge fucking misses. Aside from very rare exceptions like One Piece, they don't do a great job of it. So when I saw they announced live-action Yu Yu Hakusho like a year or two ago, I immediately just wrote it off, rolled my eyes, and said, yep, that's going to be turbo ass. And now that they've released the trailer, I can comfortably say, maybe there's a chance. Like, I'm shocked to say it, but there might be a chance that this is pretty good. I didn't outright hate the trailer. I think it's very rough around the edges, but it's a teaser first and foremost, so it's not like they showed a ton. But what they did show, I thought was fine. CG is a little wonky in a couple of the scenes there, but that's to be expected. I kind of like the direction they seem to be going. It's kind of taking characters that you don't see until the Dark Tournament saga and bringing them into the fold much earlier. And it piques my curiosity. It piques my curiosity on how they're going to handle that and what the direction they're going with the story is. It could be pretty decent. Like the couple of the fight scenes they showed, like the choreography looked kind of hype. So who knows? I thought that had no chance, was doomed to failure, but it really wasn't like alarmingly trash or anything like that. Not in my opinion. So yeah, I just wanted to briefly shout that out there because, man, what if Netflix is actually getting it together and releasing like some banger adaptations? That'd be fucking incredible. So yeah, anyway, that's really about it. So yeah.